Hey, what's up guys, it's DisturbedLegit. I'm going to be making a follow-up video to the video that I made yesterday. Yesterday I just showed you guys what a 1.4 build would look like, and to me it was the most ideal and probably the best PvP build that I believe, or what I believe to be the very best PvP build in 1.4. So today I'm kind of doing something very similar. I am showing you guys the very best PvE build. Now, in the last video you probably would have heard me say that I was only doing one build video because I thought the PTS was going down. I heard by many people that the PTS was ending that Monday, or yesterday was Monday, or today is Monday, I'm retarded, that it was going to end today, and it isn't over. Maybe it ends later tonight, I have no idea. Honestly, I haven't really looked into it because I'm lazy, but regardless, let's get right into it. So, this might be kind of controversial. I have done a lot of math and stuff regarding it, so I'm just going to go into absolutely everything and hopefully you guys can understand. The reason I'm making this is just to give you guys kind of an outline of what a 1.4 build would look like again, and this would be a PvE scenario as opposed to the last video was a PvP scenario. So today I'm just going to be going over a lot of things regarding PvE and just be talking about what I believe to be the very best build. There are a few different build combinations. I don't think I'm going to mention everything. I'll probably make videos regarding that once 1.4 is actually out. But if you just want to take my word for it right now, this is the most ideal build. So save up that Hunter's Faith, guys. But anyways, let's get into it. So I'll go over my build, the pieces that I'm running, and then I'll go over some gun talents that are good, how to mod it, and then how to, change attributes on your gear, etc, etc, etc. So for the gear set bonus, I am running 3 pieces of Hunter's Faith. The reason I'm doing this is simply because of the headshot damage bonus. Now it says it's 20%. The way that they multiply it, it is multiplicative of 20% and it does equal that. I made a video kind of going over this because the way that they mathematically figure this out is very complicated, but it's still a mathematically 33% multiplicative increase regardless of how they how their formula works. It still is that much of an increase because when you look at the statistical sheet of your character, you can see that it increased it by 33% of multiplying what your current headshot damage is, and then you test that damage against a dummy, and it is 33%, or it was, yeah, 32% headshot damage. So regardless of how they calculate it, it still is on paper that headshot damage. So looking at this, you can essentially see it as 32% regardless of how they calculate it. It does add up and it is calculated correctly, I suppose. It's just that they calculate it really weird, but in layman's terms it is 32%. If I hopefully that makes sense. Sorry, that's my phone going off. The 2-set bonus is kind of worthless. Now the reason that this 3-set bonus is better than everything else is because 1, you can use 3 other high ends with this build, and 2, in PvE the majority of your shots are going to be headshots, and when you multiply headshot damage multipliers by the extra headshot damage that you're getting on snipers, on my SVD it's 159, you can get up to 170, you start getting insane amounts of headshot damage, and that's what you want. Since an M1A or an SVD or any sniper really has the most damage output potential out of any other gun in the game in PvE, because you're going to be getting a remarkable amount of headshots. Sorry, I'm stumbling on my words. In PvE, the majority of your shots are going to be headshots, and with the ridiculous amount of headshot damage you can stack with getting Hunter's Faith, and then the 170% on your gun with Brutal, and then you can get weapon mods with headshot damage. Stacking a shitload of headshot damage gives you way more damage return than anything else would, and the 3-set of this is much more beneficial than any of the other 3 sets. I've even tested Alpha Bridge, and Alpha Bridge is my baby. It's probably one of my favorite sets. I did a spreadsheet comparing Alpha Bridge and Hunter's Faith in a PvE context, and Hunter's Faith is still better, and there isn't really any other gear set that can even come close to Hunter's Faith damage bonus. There's Sentry, which is kind of close, but it still doesn't match up to it, and you'd have to use 4 pieces for it to even get close. And if you're using 4 pieces, you couldn't get it. You'd be missing out on another high end, and then there really isn't any other gear set that can give this much damage. I'll probably be going over this in a later video, talking about a bunch of gear sets and which ones I think are good and why, etc, etc, etc. But like I said before, if you just want to take my word for it, Hunter's Faith is the best. Now, like I said, I was using Hunter's Faith, a 3-piece for the headshot damage. A 2-piece does absolutely nothing, pretty much. It's kind of decent, but on a sniper, since that's going to be your primary weapon, it's not going to be worth it. The 20% optimal range doesn't really do much. You're doing it solely for the purpose of headshot damage. Now, for the other high ends, I'm sure you guys can guess what these 2 are. I'm running Savage Gloves for crit chance because even though you are stacking crit chance, headshot damage, crit chance is still important. because there's just basically no way that you can rule out crit damage altogether. When 1.4 first launched, I was like, well, in a PvE build, what if I just completely forgot about crit chance altogether and I only stacked headshot damage? Well, you can't really do that, because the best in slot rolls on gloves, for example, you would still get crit damage, you would still get crit chance, and then there's still things like pulse, there's still gun mods that have crit chance and crit damage, so it's inescapable. You cannot get away from crit chance and crit damage. So regardless of what build you're doing, and you originally my thought process was, if I can just get headshot damage on absolutely everything and just base damage, then it would be better than, stacking crit chance and crit damage, and I could try to distance myself from that because those numbers have been nullified, but it's just not possible. So going for Savage is still probably the best thing to do in PvE anyways for this build, or actually any other build. That's very subjective, but going for crit chance is really still important, and you're still worrying about stacking crit chance and crit damage even in PvE scenarios when you're stacking headshot damage. Then for the chest piece, I'm going for Reckless. The reason that I go for Reckless is just it's a flat out 8% damage, and it's not PvP, so you're not really worried that much about taking incoming damage. I'll probably be talking about my toughness to firearms ratio in a little bit here. And regarding how much toughness you really need, it really depends on what you're running, or like what type of PvE content you're doing. If you're doing challenge mode missions, then you might want to switch out a Reckless chest for possibly another high end. I can't even think of another high end. Maybe even 4-piece Hunter's Faith. 4-piece Hunter's Faith really isn't that good. That's the reason that I didn't go for that, is because when I was testing it, the 4-piece bonus was rather negligible, at least in the PvE context, because it only works for one extra bullet, and one bullet really isn't going to mean the difference between life and death. And even if it is, somebody could just revive you, so it's not that big of a deal. So this build is clearly meant for group scenarios. For soloing, I would not recommend this, or at least rolling for Reckless, because you don't want to take that much damage. You need at least some form of damage mitigation. And I do have I guess a decent amount of toughness, but this build is meant for PvE in a group context. So doing something like Falcon Laws, possibly a challenge mode mission, you kind of just sit back. It really just depends on your playstyle, but this build is in the mindset of you're going to be using a sniper, and then sometimes an assault rifle if something gets close to you, and it's in the context of playing with a group. So I just thought I'd get that out of the way. So that's why I'm using Reckless, because taking the extra damage doesn't really give that much of a burden on me, because I'm playing with a group and I'm usually sitting back and I'm sniping. Now for the other high end, I couldn't really decide if I just wanted to go for 4-piece Hunter's Faith or for just another random high end, and I just decided to go for another random high end because 4-piece Hunter's Faith is rather negligible, and there really wasn't any other high ends that I thought were worth going for. You could get I don't even remember the name of it. I think it's called the Sturdy Holster. Gives you more armor. I don't think it's worth it at all. I just went for a backpack that gives me extra skill power. This gives me about 20k skill power. As you can see, if I switch my backpack, I lose about 20k skill power. I went for this just so that my heal heals me for more, and that my pulse is a little bit better, and it actually does give a quite significant bonus since my toughness is rather low. Having my heal me up to full and giving me that full overshield is pretty nice to have, and since I'm maximizing damage, the pulse actually does give me a pretty good amount of damage increase. That's really nice as well. So that's the build overview: 3 Hunter's Faith, Reckless, Savage, and Specialized Backpack, just for the skill power, extra damage, and then headshot damage. So since I'm using Hunter's Faith for the headshot damage, obviously I'm going to be prioritizing hitting headshots, and with a sniper rifle it's really easy to do that. Now, with a lot of changes to snipers, the very best sniper in the game now is an SVD. I will prove this in a later video. Again, you can take everything that I say with a grain of salt, or you can just believe me. I've done the math, I've tested everything. I just haven't made videos about these yet because I've been apprehensive, because I was thinking maybe they would change these, because I'm surprised that the SVD didn't get nerfed, because they said they don't want guns to be like lasers, but the SVD actually got a buff while everything else got just nerfed to the ground with the grips and everything being changed, because you can't get like 20% accuracy, 30% horizontal stability on grips and muzzles anymore. So that really nerfed M1As and everything into the ground in terms of their recoil, while the SVD didn't need accuracy to begin with. So the SVD is now the best just due to the fact that you can spam headshots much faster than everything else, and the damage isn't that much lower. I don't actually have any other sniper in my inventory to compare it to. I do have these bolt actions, but I don't think that's very representative of anything. So If you want to take my word for it, SVD is the best. Now, the reason that I would rather use a sniper over something like a Scar L in PvE is because, like I said before, the headshot damage stacks really well with an extra headshot percentage on my gear. And also, just with the per bullet damage, the RPM, the headshot damage, all of this added together equals way more than all of this added together, if that makes sense. I did a spreadsheet. It's roughly like 1.7 times more extra damage. It really depends on what build you're using and what mods you're using, what gun you're using, etc. But regardless, I'm going to stop talking about this. I'll prove this all in later videos with math. If you don't want to believe me, that's perfectly fine. But the best gun in PvE as of right now is an SVD when stacking headshot damage. So this is my primary gun. I'll get into modding it in a second here. But for the secondary gun, the very best gun in PvE, if you were also to use Alpha Bridge, you would want to use an assault rifle. I would use a G36. I don't have a G36 just because I couldn't, for the life of me, get a good roll on one. So right now I'm using a Scar L. But the reason it's going to be assault rifles over something like an LMG is because assault rifles have way higher RPM than LMGs. The base damage is roughly the same, and the enemy armor damage accumulates just the same way that damage to targets out of cover does. And actually, damage to targets out of cover isn't as consistent, I guess, as enemy armor damage, because targets are in cover. Wow, the colors on the background are fluctuating a lot. Targets are in cover rather frequently, so enemy armor damage is probably much more consistent, and assault rifles just give way more damage than LMGs do, regardless of what you think you've heard. I mean, just 17.7k 500 RPM as compared to 17.8k 625 RPM, and the G36 is significantly better than a Scar L. So the reason the G36 is way better is because it probably has the very best recoil control out of any assault rifle. I take that with a grain of salt because I can't really remember if there is another one that's possibly better, but it also just has higher base damage and higher RPM than the majority of assault rifles, Scar L included. So G36 definitely the very best for your secondary, or if you're running Alpha Bridge, that would be what your primary would be. So in terms of the very best talents on these guns, I have not mathematically figured all of this out, but I'm just going to list them in a group of tiers. So tier 1, I would put Vicious, Destructive, Brutal, and let me see if I can find one. I would not put Responsive because you are not oftentimes more than 10 meters or closer than 10 meters to a target, and since your main choice of weapon is going to be a sniper rifle, Responsive isn't really going to help you out in that scenario. Let me see here. Prepared, I would say, is probably tier 2. It's probably decent. I'm saying probably a lot. I would prefer Brutal and Destructive over these. Why can't I find it? Competent is decent. I would say it's tier 2 because it's not going to be up all the time while a lot of these other talents are. I can't find it. Fierce is decent, probably tier 2 or tier 3. Just 5% crit chance isn't that great. Vicious, very good because you'll be at a lot of health very frequently, especially with a sniper build, and since you are stacking crit damage and crit chance, having this amount of crit chance can be extremely beneficial to have. Unforgiving, not very good because you're going to try to be topped out in health a lot of the time, and with a sniper you're not going to be rushing a lot, so having that isn't really going to be super beneficial. And the fact that you can only have 3 talents really narrows your options down. I can't find it because I don't have a gun with it, but the talent I was looking for was Ferocious, which increases your damage against elites by 10%. The reason that Destructive, Ferocious, Vicious would be tier 1 talents is because they are flat damage that require, or that they require nothing, basically. They're always up. Destructive works as just flat 15% enemy armor damage, which is amazing. Ferocious, 10% flat damage. Vicious, just complementing your crit damage, which is really good. If you don't have good crit damage, probably not worth it to go for Vicious. I haven't actually tested if Vicious is better. If it's better to get Vicious than something like Brutal. Brutal is good, it's just that it's additive and not multiplicative like Hunter's Faith is, but it is pretty good when you're considering the fact that you are stacking headshots. So if I were to say just a list of the 3 very best, or the 4 very best, Destructive, Brutal, Vicious, and maybe, no, not Responsive, and Ferocious. That's the very best there. Now, in terms of modding your SVD, just stacking headshot damage, my god, the video's going on really long. I'm sorry, guys. You guys complain about me saying sorry, but I'm complaining about you complaining about me saying sorry because I think I owe you an apology because I don't want to drag things out too long, and I kind of criticize other people for not being concise, but I just want to give as much information as I possibly can, and because a lot of this stuff isn't really known yet, so hopefully you seeing this will give you some more inner insight. It'll give you more insight so that when 1.4 comes out, you're not as clueless. And you know, I was pretty clueless, and it took me a while to learn all this, so hopefully I can convey all this information to you guys. So again, sorry for being so long, but regardless, now since you're stacking headshot damage, the reason, by the way, you might say, I probably should have brought this up earlier. A lot of you might be saying that, well, in your last Alpha Bridge video, you were saying to stack crit damage and not headshot damage. Why are you now contradicting yourself, saying you need to stack headshot damage? Well, that's because in PvP, there's absolutely no way you're going to be able to hit as many headshots as you are on very stagnant NPCs. On NPCs that are like hardly moving, it's very easy to land headshots and have a well over 80% headshot chance, especially with a sniper rifle. In PvP, with guys swerving and drifting all over the damn place, especially with a sniper, there's no way in hell you're going to have that, you know, that much of a consistent headshot chance. So in PvE, headshot damage is clearly just a way better thing to go for because you can get a higher chance of hitting headshots as compared to you getting crits. So that's why I would go for headshot damage, especially with the fact that you're stacking headshot damage and you're going to be using a sniper. So hopefully that makes sense. Now in terms of the scope, similar to how my Alpha Bridge build was, seeing how this is crit damage, crit chance, and headshot damage, just flip the numbers. So now instead of having the main as headshot damage, I go for, or crit damage I mean, I just switch crit damage and headshot damage, and then I have crit chance. Now I didn't get a perfect scope, and this is still true with my muzzle. I don't have a perfect one, so mine doesn't have crit chance, but you can get headshot damage, and crit chance, and that would be God roll. And you don't really need stability or accuracy because, I mean, the numbers are extremely negligible, 2.5%. Not going to do fuck all, especially with an SVD having almost no recoil at all. Actually, just to prove it to you that it doesn't, I'll just show it real quick. It has fairly no recoil as compared to something like in MK17 where you have to go boo, 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 because the reticle spreads out super huge. But with an SVD, you can kind of, especially in cover, this is way more true in cover, you can just go boo, 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 and that's why an SVD is so much better. But regardless, I digress. For the magazine, I really haven't figured out what the absolute best was with a sniper rifle. You can't get headshot damage on a magazine, so I just assume it's mag size, crit chance, and rate of fire. Rate of fire on an SVD, because when enemies get super close to you, it might just be worth it to keep with the SVD and spray with them as opposed to just switching to your assault rifle, because SVD will have more damage than an assault rifle will, especially with the fact that you'll be able to spray with it. So rate of fire is decent. You could also go for reload speed. I haven't really figured this out because you aren't going to be topping out your rate of fire like you just saw before. You're not going to be able to spray it 100% without, you know, having diminishing returns and missing a lot of your shots. So rate of fire probably isn't the best thing to go for. There just really isn't anything else that's good to substitute it, I guess. I mean, reload speed is okay. Crit damage could probably be another good substitute, but it's not that big of a deal. On your grip, since you can't get what's it called, headshot damage, you kind of just have to go for crit damage. This is another thing, or another reason why you can't escape just missing out on crit chance, because if you miss out on crit chance, 20% crit damage is a huge amount of damage. So to just have that, just, oh, well, fuck 20% crit damage, you're just shooting yourself in the foot. So you kind of have to go for that. For the muzzle, headshot damage, crit chance, and crit damage. Again, mine is horribly rolled, but it is what it is. Just stack headshot damage, and that's pretty much end of story. Exact same thing on a Scar L. So now that I have the weapons out of the way, let's talk about firearms, toughness to skill power ratios. The way that I have it is I like to have this kind of balanced. With the fact that I'm running reckless, I do need a decent amount of toughness. If I wasn't running reckless, I would probably just let's see if I can make an example. I'd probably just do this if I, or no, I'm retarded. Is this firearms? Okay, I can't really show you, but if I wasn't running reckless, I would just probably lose 500 stamina, and then I'd be at around the same amount of toughness, and then just put that all into firearms. That would probably equal around the same amount, because, you know, I'm 8%. I'll kind of explain to you guys what firearms does real quick. 8% damage is roughly around 900 to 1,000 firearms. That's the way that firearms calculates itself. So then if I were to get that much extra firearms, but then lose that much toughness, I would then have lower amounts of health, so then I'm essentially, now I'm not taking more incoming damage, but I die 10% faster in proportion, if you understand what that means. So if I wasn't using Reckless, I'd probably just knock it down just to substitute for that, but the fact that I'm running Reckless, that's why my toughness seems so high, but it's really just to complement the fact that I'm running Reckless. I could go full glass and just lose another 500 stamina, but I think you'd end up getting, you know, it would give you like flashbacks of 1.3 and you'd have PTSD because you'd probably be getting 1 and 2 shotted by shotgunners at that point. That's probably not the best thing to do. So yeah, I just prefer to have it around here. Now let's look at individual gear rolls. This is very important for PvE because in PvE you want to maximize damage as much as possible, and it's way different than PvP. You can't really have a PvE min-max and PvP min-max build at the same time because the rolls are so significantly different. For your chest piece, obviously you want armor, and then to maximize damage, you want damage to elites. It's pretty simple here. 7% damage to elites is going to give you more than anything else, and like I have explained before, toughness isn't that big of a deal, so getting health or health on kill, probably not that big of a deal. Oh, something that I completely neglected to mention. Another great thing that you can do with this build, if you are running solo, I completely forgot about this, and this is a pointer, or not a pointer, but a bonus to those of you who have sticked for this long. Jesus Christ, it's 21 minutes. Oh my god. I commend all of you who are still here. I love each and every one of you, and because I do, I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a secret. Not really secret, but something that you can do. You can go, instead of getting, if you're like playing solo and you still want to use this build, instead of going for this and this, get 2-piece Nomad, and then stay with the same amount of toughness. The reason you want 2-piece Nomad is because you kill NPCs faster now, and that's 20% extra health on kill. 20% extra health on kill will let you kind of run gung-ho, and then you probably won't be using a SVD anymore though, so it might not be the best to run this. It still probably is actually the best to run this with an assault rifle or possibly a shotgun. Actually, I did prove this with math. So it still is better to run Hunter's Faith, even if you are going gung-ho with a shotgun or a what's it called, assault rifle. So getting the 2 pieces of Nomad is really nice for the 20% health on kill. It'll keep you topped up and have you really be tanky, and then you can keep the Savage so that you're not losing out on damage. That's a really good build you can go for as well, but in a team scenario you just want as much damage as possible, and Nomad obviously isn't going to give you damage, and if you're a sniping build you're not really worrying about staying at full health, and the health on kill isn't going to be that big of a deal. Yeah, that's just a random tangent. I should have remembered to mention that at the beginning, but I forgot. But regardless, so yeah, for a chest piece you want damage to elites, just stacking up that damage. For a mask you want damage to elites and enemy armor damage. Enemy armor damage works just as flat damage, similar to how damage to elites does. So just seeing by that, just getting perfect rolls. As you can see also on my knee pads, you want enemy armor damage as well. That's 10% there, and then an extra 9%. This can go up to 10%, so I'll just say 20%, and then an extra, this can go up to 9%, and then this can go up to about 8 or 9%. So altogether that's almost 40% extra flat damage that you're getting, and you can also get it on gloves as well. You can get 9% damage to elites. That's a shitload of extra damage that you're getting just from having your gear rolls perfectly. And you know, that's almost it's 50% extra damage just from getting good rolls, as opposed to if you were to use a PvP PvE hybrid build. So I think it's really worth it to make a separate build just for PvE, as opposed to having your builds mixing with each other. So that's a really good thing to do. Just get that damage to elites and enemy armor damage, because it's going to be much more beneficial than getting skill power, or what's it called, crit damage or crit chance or something, because it's 8% flat damage, which is crazy. Like I've already proved in spreadsheets before to myself that 7% crit chance is inferior to 8% crit or flat damage. So it's really worth it to go for the flat damage, and that's the way that damage to elites works. On your backpack you want armor again, just stacking armor everywhere that you can. You still, like I said, or not like I said, but the reason you're not going for crit damage, this might sound contradictory to me saying that you don't need that much toughness, but you need at least this much amount of toughness so that you're not getting completely destroyed by NPCs. But even if you didn't, even if you wanted to be full glass, it's still not worth it to sacrifice this amount of armor for crit damage, because the amount of crit damage you get is ridiculously low. It's like 6 or 8%, and that's complete garbage. And the amount of damage to elites on knee pads is like 4 or 5%. It's just not worth it, man. It's really not worth it. It's just going to burden your experience horribly, and it's much better just to get for armor. For your gloves, damage to elites, crit damage, crit chance, pretty simple there. Holster, armor. In terms of performance mods, my backpack is from 1.3, so I don't have performance mods on it, but in terms of performance mods, since I'm using a specialized backpack, and if you aren't having somebody else running Pulse on your team, since I have more skill power than the majority of other people, since everybody's stacking armor and other damage things, they're not going to have that much skill power, but since I'm running specialized, I'm going to have much more skill power than they are, so my pulse is inherently going to be better. So then, since my pulse is going to be better, I just stack performance mods with pulse crit chance, which will help me get to my pulse crit cap. And then if I'm deciding to stack all this crit chance, I could, instead of going for vicious, go for something like brutal, just to top out as much flat damage. And then I haven't really figured out if this would give me a crit cap or not yet, so don't take my word for this. It could be better to do that. I'd still have to prove everything with spreadsheets, etc. But it could end up giving you crit chance cap if you get 1.5% pulse crit chance there. So that would be, what, 3%? That would be 6% extra crit chance, which would be pretty nice as well. So it could end up being pretty worth it. So that's pretty much it for that. So hopefully that explains the build. Now we're just going to go into talents. For your pulse, obviously going to be running tactical scanner. It's not the best in the world, but my crit chance, if I actually had two performance mod slots in my backpack, it would actually be more than my crit damage, which is crazy, but it's around 18% crit chance, which actually isn't bad. Or actually, this would go up by 3%, so 19%, so close to 20%. That's pretty good. Obviously, you're going to be using first aid with overdose. It's pretty simple. For these talents, there's a lot of different things. I still have this set up from PvP, so let me just switch these right now to what I believe would be ideal. My game just stuttered. That was weird. Okay. I would keep precision, because my pulse isn't going to be up all the time. And then I would switch out critical save, or not critical save, what the hell is that? Strike back for stopping power. Alright, so now let me explain myself before you all lose your shit. Why am I stuttering so bad? Okay. Critical save, use a mech during low health to increase damage resistance by 40% for 10 seconds. I'm sure you guys all know this is just to remain tanky. You could switch this off for something like on the move, steady hands. You don't really need this with an SVD, but you could if you're using an M1A or something. Triage is helpful. Adrenaline is helpful. I just like to use it just because it seems to work out pretty well. Combat medic is decent too, but to each his own. Tactical advance, maybe you're just not moving cover to cover that often. But if you're doing underground, it could prove to be pretty helpful. But if you're not doing underground, if you're doing like Falcon Loss where you remain still, it's probably not worth it to go for this. But if you're doing something where you're moving a lot and you're going from place to place, Tactical Advance could give you a shitload of extra damage. It does only last for 10 seconds, but still probably better than running Critical Save if you're not worried about dying. Precision, pretty much a must because you're not going to have your pulse up all the time with the way that the cooldowns work now with the skills. So you're going to want to have precision so that you at least have that extra crit chance and crit damage up pretty much all the time. The reason stopping power is really good because with a sniper rifle, when you shoot something that's in cover, you are automatically suppressing them, and then an extra 25% headshot damage against all NPCs is really good. I actually plan on making a video dedicated to this. I'll probably make it in the near future with the fact that we're waiting for 1.4 to come out, so I won't have any content to make revolving around 1.4. So I'll probably be making a video dedicated to stopping power and tactical advance. So that'll be interesting, but since you're stacking headshot damage, it's pretty simple to go for this. It's a really underrated talent. Again, getting the inner scoop of knowledge by staying with me for a whole 28 minutes. My god, I feel very bad for you that you had to endure this, but regardless, almost done. So stopping power is really good too. One is none just because you're stacking headshots. You want to reduce the amount of time that you're reloading as much as possible, so having one is none is really good. So that's pretty much it, guys. I really hope this helped. So just a quick overview. Hunter's Faith, best in-slot gear set for PvE nowadays. Best gun, SVD, best talents, destructive, vicious, ferocious, brutal, reckless, savage, and specialized are the other three hinds that I can use as well. I like to have my toughness and firearms around this. For your rolls, you want to get damage to elites, enemy armor damage on absolutely everything that you can, and also you want to mod everything with armor as well, just to, it's not worth it to go for the little bit of crit chance and then lose like thousands of armor. It maybe would. You can get like 1% crit chance mods, but you're losing out on a shitload of armor if you do that. I would probably have to figure out, like, I haven't tested this extensively in a group scenario, so I can't really see if it's worth it to go for more armor or for crit chance or having like a mix of both, because I can't really tell if this build gets killed super quickly, and I'll probably be testing this more once 1.4 finally comes out. But for now, it will work perfectly fine. So yeah, I hope this explains everything, and yeah, sorry for the video being long again. I know all you hate me saying that, but you know, I couldn't stand to listen to myself for 30 minutes, but I digress. Hopefully this was helpful. It's kind of late, so oh my god, it's 11:43. Yeah, it's late. I should probably go to sleep. 'Cause I have school in the morning, but yeah, that's probably why my mind is drifting and I'm going on rants. But yeah, anyways, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys later. Peace out.